time for a few audience questions. And we have a microphone here at the back in the center aisle. If anyone has a question, we'd like you to go to the microphone. And that's also so our speakers and we can all hear you, and for our webcast audience. So please, I hope somebody we've inspired you to be more, to ask something more of us. Hi.
To the gentleman on the right, you had mentioned about finding to buy from fair trade and to find more local people that are producing the cacao. In terms of buying sugar, how do we know by looking at a label, who, where I'm going with that question?
Absolutely, yes. Well, let's step back a little bit and let's recognize that we have a food system that more often than not prioritizes profit. So even for labels, they are well-intentioned. Sometimes you have to be careful because eventually they may not do the work that they say they are doing. With that being said, I think that there are now other resources that are not only, let's say, the fair trade label, but there are other organizations that are community-led that are starting to be a lot more visible. And I'll be happy to take your email and send you more info on that.
If you can find a natural food store or a co-op, or I'm not going to name any brands here, but a place that ventures into supporting smaller farmers, or I know, having recently traveled in Italy, you would just look for the little slow food sign and know that you would be going in for a real treat of a cheese made by a woman down the road kind of thing. So most markets here like that carry a line of chocolate that's fair trade and pretty good, not as good as Julio's, so as we've all heard. Anything else? Yes?
A lot of peppers, and so if you could just speak to that blending of the whole idea of mole and the blending of the chocolate with the chile, with the many different kinds of chile, and how does that meet our palate? How does that interact? What is that chemical reaction?
So the depth of the flavor of a mole, or mixing all these 28 ingredients together.
What I believe happens is that when you add chili into the chocolate, it literally opens up your pores, and all of that vitamins and minerals are absorbed rather quickly. And how we do it when we do our ceremony in December, every year we do this, we make a thick broth of chocolate and then chili is added. And what that does is that the person who's performing the ceremony literally grows into a natural high. And that the chili added just opens up the pores, and he just whoops, and then he can perform his work better. But that's what the chili does. Different pepper or chili you add has different flavor. I do not use habanero peppers. They do not give the flavor I want. I usually go for the little broad pepper, they call them, little peppers. They have, when you smoke them, give you fine, fabulous flavor, and those are the ones I use. I do not have chili chocolate on me today, but I have other flavored chocolate that are in the room on the other side. You can go check it out, but I did not bring chili chocolate simply because I ran out of it completely.
Okay, next.
Okay, if I can indulge you with two questions, actually. The first one's for Julio, and it's in regard to, when you mentioned that the bean is out and you're curing it, I'm going to use that word, and it's at 60 degrees, how important is it to keep it at that 60 degrees? You know, if it goes to 70 or 50, I'm not sure, you know, when you're harvesting what the temperatures are like in Belize. So that's my first question. And the second one I'll just put out there, it's for Freddie. My question's about the chocolate tart that you all serve here at the museum. If it's not made here, you can just tell me, forget it, don't worry about it, but hopefully it is. I have to say it's fantastic, and I'll throw you a dig for everybody in the room. I was just curious on, you know, the preparation for that. Thank you.
Okay. The temperature is really not terribly terribly important on how hot it gets. It just gets hotter if you're harvesting during the dry season when there's less water in your pod. So that means you have a concentrated level of sugar within the pod. So when that is added into fermentation, the whole bean, temperature rises up to 65, 68 simply because there's lots more sugar inside. But when you harvest during the rainy season, it has more water inside the pod, so there's less sugar, it's dissolved, so temperature do not tend to go as high. But once it hits 50, it will ferment quite nicely. But when you have less water, more sugar, you get more fermentation, and your flavor tends to be more better.
Great, thank you.
As far as the chocolate tart, we follow a recipe. We make it here. Everything in the cafe is made here, with the exceptions of the stuff that are prepackaged, of course. But we have a very, very fine cook who prepares the chocolate tarts for us, and she's been doing it for many years. The privilege that I have of working here is my staff, about 90% of them have been here at least longer than 5 years, and that's really rare in the restaurant business. And so she's the one who will make the ganache, and she'll prepare everything the way that she prefers. She's actually from the area, so maybe it's just in her system as well to make good chocolate, you know. So.
Hi, next.
Howdy. As a person who's also trying to walk into the chef world and learn that journey, one question I've been wrestling with is, does the general American population care about food, or does it care about eating? Because I think a lot of times people just want to eat. Like, they don't care about what they're putting into their bodies. And I think of this often as, like, myself growing up, I ate a lot of, like, quote-unquote commodity foods, right? Your Chef Boyardee's, your gas station sandwiches, your granola bars, your Top Ramen, things like that, Spam. And I loved it. Like, I genuinely loved that food. And a lot of the people who I've grown up with who are from a lower economic bracket love those foods, right? Go to Hawaii, they love Spam. You go to, like, different areas around the world, they love Top Ramen. How do we, and as industry makes these foods more readily available and cheaper, right? You can get them at any gas station corner. How do you combat that? Because I think chefs inherently care about food. They care about taste, they care about flavor, they care about eating good food, but I don't think necessarily everyone does. So how do you get people to care about food?
That's actually a really good question. And was that for me? I mean, okay, all right.
Go ahead.
All right.
You're on it.
That's a really good question. And my answer to that would simply just be to embrace it. Food is food. It regardless of where it comes from, how it comes. Somebody eats it somewhere. You know, somebody needs to eat something in order to survive. And I grew up on and off the Navajo reservation, and my father's parents got the commodity foods. And my mother, I always used to tell her, can you get the cheese, please? And back in the 80s, something just horrible happened, and they changed it to a version of Kraft Singles, but it still came in the loaf. And everybody was so angry and there was like riots. People were mad. But the funny thing is, it may be government-issued food, and it has a really bad rep, especially with foodies and food snobs. They give it a really, any type of canned food or anything, a bad rep. But the reason why people like the commodity cheese is plain and simply, it was real cheese. You know, nobody seemed to have thought about that. It was real cheese. So when they took and they gave the fake cheese, that's why everybody got mad. And it's like, why are the poor people crying about cheese? But it's really because, plain and simply, it was real food. We have this battle with fried and not fried, canned or not canned. Well, I did a class up in Minnesota before I used to travel and do a lot of lectures and demos for communities. And I was up in Minnesota, and I did a demo with corn chowder. And I used canned corn, and what I did was I drained it, washed it, or rinsed them, and then put them on a sheet pan, salt and pepper, a little bit of oil, and I roast them in the oven. And this lady came up to me, and she stopped me in the middle of my demo, and she goes, why are you using canned corn in this demo? Shouldn't you be using fresh corn? And I said, it's October, and this is a class for people to eat healthy at home. And most likely, I'm pretty sure people are willing to go and plant corn in the middle of Minnesota in December, you know? And they're viable to travel hundreds of miles to get to the Whole Foods and get their fresh corn. It doesn't make any sense when people tend to push so much things on, especially with food, and making people feel bad about what they eat. I think that's just wrong. You know, we have a Hawaiian festival here one time, and we had to get Spam, and none of our purveyors that we order from have Spam, you know, in bulk. So I had to trek it down to the Safeway, and I bought 20 cans of the Spam. And I mean, even you know, I grew up eating Spam burritos in New Mexico when I was a kid, and even people in New Mexico don't buy Spam by the 20s. And everybody in the Safeway was laughing about me. You know, it was so weird. I don't care. You know, I'll do it. But they tried to make me feel embarrassed about buying something that is in a store. So food shaming, I think, is a big thing. And to go further on that, I know this is probably going off topic, but with fry bread especially is a big issue with native chefs. You know, we say, do you make it or do you not? People are against it. People are for it. There's so many things to you know, that people are coming up with these food arguments that are making things so divisive. So when it comes to do we eat or do we like to eat, or what your question was, food is out there. It's just taking it in moderation, because some of the junk food is good, you know. I openly confess to a lot of my guests and people who listen to my lectures is I absolutely love gas station nachos. And it's the only thing that I eat that isn't real, you know, that Velveeta cheese or whatever it is. It really is the only thing that I go and I'm embarrassed. I'm in the middle of the Californian desert at the gas station, and I'm pumping that cheese, and I'm hoping nobody's watching me, and I run to my car. That's pretty, you know, that food shaming, I think it's food shaming is where we become unhealthy, because we can't afford, some people can't afford most of the better stuff, most of the real stuff. But the real stuff is out there, and just trying to find that balance of eating the real stuff, because most of the time, when something is low fat or sugar, low sugar, if you read the box, they add more sodium in there rather than you know, taking out the sodium. So they have to find a balance. When something on the box says it's low or it's not missing something, they're clearly adding something to make that 100% up again. And most likely it's chemicals. And I did a healthy cooking class one day, and I was cooking with butter. And the dietitian came up to me and she goes, we don't teach our community to cook with butter because it's not healthy. The only thing I did was I tore off the box, the ingredients, and I gave her, because I always used to travel with an empty margarine tub, and I turned both of those around and I had her look at them. I go, which one would you eat? The one that says butter, solids, and water, or the one with the 20 ingredients that you can't pronounce? I go, how is that healthy? You know, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So, you know, again, just embrace the fact that all the food's around, and don't be ashamed to eat whatever that's there, because if there's one thing that I always leave people before when I give a lecture or a speech, is there's only two things that will ever truly put you down and make you feel bad. It's when people purposely mispronounce your name, and when they put down your comfort food. You know, it's like, why are you laughing about the food that I'm eating? It will bother you. You know, who cares if people dip their French fries in barbecue sauce or ranch dressing or whatever? If that's what they do, that's their, you know, that's their own little world that they have. So that's what I tell people, is just embrace what people eat and appreciate what people eat, because somebody does have to live off of Chef Boyardee. We've all done it, especially we've been in college. You know?
I'm gonna, if I may, I'm gonna try to be really brief, and I'm gonna disagree with my friend slightly. Well, I do agree that food shaming hasn't worked, and it never will. That's so we should really stop doing that, and the whole nutrition, all of the nutrition societies should really change the way they approach nutrition in communities of color specifically. One thing that is important to recognize, I humbly walked away from cooking full-time in kitchens to learning about how the food system works 2 years ago. And I can tell you that it's been not only eye-opening, but also really, it's been quite an experience to learn about how the food system works. Yes, there's a lot of people they need to eat commodity foods, or they don't have access to food, but that doesn't make it right. Today in the US, there's 46.5 million people that don't make enough money to afford to eat healthy. So that's a problem. And one thing that is really important to recognize is people, it's not that people don't want to eat healthy. It's that more often than not, people don't have access. If you live in a community where there's only bodegas and no real grocery stores, like the community where I work, a city of 40,000 people, we have only 2 full supermarkets. Plenty of liquor stores and plenty of bodegas, only 2 supermarkets. Right next door, 50 miles down the road, a smaller town with about 12,000 people, it has about 3 or 4 full supermarkets. So that's the difference. The last thing that I like to say is that food, especially in the indigenous communities, food is one of the things that causes many illnesses. A lot of the issues, health-related issues, stem from food, and those are preventable things. If you look at a map, there's real statistics that can predict how long someone like me will live as opposed to someone that is white, and the difference is about 7 years. And a lot of it has to do with food. So a lot to think about. But I think the most important thing is to humbly recognize that not all of us have access to real food.
Yeah, thank you. It's ironic to me, it always has been, that cheap food is manufactured. I mean, white sugar, how did they dream that up? How did they dream up white flour? You know, before white flour was manufactured, there were dozens of flours that had more protein, that were healthier for you. Yes?
I can actually answer that. White flour used to be the flour that the kings the royalty would eat.
Oh. Oh, royalty. So it could be smooth, I guess. I don't know. We have time for one more question. Do we have another person?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this panel. It's been wonderful. And I just want to say, Freddie, I grew up on a farm in Minnesota, and if you grew up on a farm, you know you only get fresh corn in August. That's it. The rest of the time, you get canned corn. My question is, maybe for Julio or anyone who wants to answer it, when the cacao beans were being traded, like pre-Columbian, were they roasted beans, like in the process you described, or were they raw beans in the trading process? And then also, is there an origin story to how whoever figured out to ferment them and separate them and roast them, like sort of like if you go upstairs to the 4th floor, there's like how the Big Dipper happened, and all those sorts of origin stories. Thank you very much.
Sure. Trading, I forgot your first part of the question. So-
The first part of my question was, were the beans that were traded pre-Columbian,
Oh,
were they
sure.
okay.
Okay.
roasted beans, or were they
Okay.
just like the single picture of the white, the raw beans you were demonstrating?
Yeah, the beans most likely are treated raw because if you treat them roasted, it's like chef. You don't want to pre-cook their food; they want to cook it themselves. So they prefer it in a raw form, and this is how they have to be transported. If they are transported roasted, they will spoil along the way because they will get moisture. So it's raw. And your second question was the.
Is there some sort of traditional wisdom or origin story about how it was figured out that the pods had beans, and then to ferment them, and then how you tell stories to little kids about this is how it happened, so you carry that knowledge with you?
Yes. Okay. So I'm not sure how the Mayas figured it out, because it's the Mayan people who first had cacao. And all of this commercialization of chocolate starts with the Mayan people, and when the Europeans went in to really make it into a big deal and commercialize it, but the roasting literally starts from the Mayan. They're the ones who had it. They're the first ones to do it. So we do it in a more smaller way. So I'm not sure how I would answer your question, but that stories are too many that you don't know which one to believe. But the ones that we do are basically roasted over open fire, and this is how it has always been done. And I believe that the reason for that is to give it more flavor, because there are 3 methods of how you can do it, but the one that is most common, the one that is most used, is the open fire roasting, because that smoke gives you that flavor, and you have better control over it. So I'm not sure if I have answered your question, but that's how we do it.
You did answer it. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much to the speakers. This was fun, and thank you to everyone for coming.
Thank you.
You can join us at 4 o'clock in the museum's Mitzatam Cafe, sorry, the coffee bar, just across the lobby for a wine tasting. It's the Cedar Band of Paiute, and they're from Lodi, California, and they're featuring their award-winning certified sustainable wines, so that's at 4 o'clock. And I also wanted to mention that there are demos going on all weekend. We did one this morning. Freddie did one this morning. There are 3 tomorrow and 2 on Sunday. It's on the card, the schedule. And the demos are great. Bison chili, a fennel orange salad with a chocolate vinaigrette. And then both Neff and Julio are making a food.
Yeah, chocolate pinole is what I'm doing.
Yes. And
It's yeah.
emolada?
Enmoladas, yeah.
Yeah, which is like how you use your leftover
Enchiladas,
mole,
yeah.
which I loved. It sounds delicious. So, if you're around tomorrow or Sunday, I think the demos would be very interesting. They're here too. So, thank you. This was fun.
Thank you. Last drink of water.